Ars Nouveau spells are great for players of all stages, from the beginner who needs a dash and night vision to explore the world, up to the endgame player who wants to teleport bosses and quickly farm hundreds of ores in seconds. I will show you today my top 10 Ars Nouveau spells covering each of the 3 tiers and give you an introduction into the basics of spellmaking. If you like this kind of content, make sure to hit the subscribe button. And with that, let's begin. We will start with a novice spellbook that lets us use tier 1 glyphs. You can craft this book by combining a book with iron tools. To open your spellbook, press the C key. At first, you won't have many glyphs to create spells with. To get more glyphs, you will need a scribe's table, which requires archwood. You can get the archwood from the new archwood trees that are generated in your world. Now with our scribe's table ready, we can right-click it with our book in hand and a new UI will appear, which shows all the possible glyphs in the mod. For easier viewing, you can select tier 1 glyphs on the right side. Next, let's learn how to unlock new glyphs. We're going to do this based on the Amplify glyph, one of the most commonly used ones since it improves a spell's power. When we hover over the glyph, we can see the requirements of 1 diamond pickaxe and 3 levels. To start the process, you have to click the glyph and then click on select. Now we need to throw the items needed for the glyph on or next to the table. After a short animation, we will get our Amplify glyph, which we can learn by right-clicking with it. Next we need to talk shortly about essences, since they are also commonly used to craft glyphs. Essences are crafted inside of an imbuement chamber. There are multiple essence types and they normally require 3 specific items and 1 source gem. The crafting happens by placing the items on an arcane pedestal or platforms around the imbuement chamber, and then adding the source gem in the center. This process can be sped up by adding a source jar close by. Also, the resources won't get used up in the process, so I recommend making more than just 1 per round. With the basics covered, let's make some spells. Let's start with our mobility spell, which allows us to launch ourselves over a short or long distance. To cast a spell, you will need at minimum these glyphs: Self and Leap, but for the best effect and safety, I would also recommend adding Amplify and Bounce. When constructing the spell, you can add more or fewer amplifiers depending on how strong you want the dash to be. I normally like to have 3 amplifiers when I explore the world. To already mention a potential upgrade when you reach tier 2 is to create a separate slow fall spell with a extended time glyph. And additionally, you should remove then the bounce from your dash. That way you can use less mana with each dash you do. Next, we have our visibility spell, which makes cave exploring way easier since it gives us night vision. To cast the spell, you will need Self and Conjure Mage Light. You can add an Amplify to get night vision too, but that's not really needed in most cases. When you reach tier 2, you can add some extend time glyphs to increase the duration of the effect. Lastly, for tier 1, we are going to make an attack spell that 1 or 2 hits most normal enemies. To cast the spell, you will need either projectile or touch, depending if you want to use it for ranged or melee, and then harm, twice, amplify, delay, harm, amplify, amplify, delay, and harm. That concludes the spells I can recommend the most for tier 1. There are more, but those are my favorites. To unlock tier 2 spells, you need to upgrade your spellbook. This requires some more expensive resources. The first spell we're going to create is our self-healing spell, which needs self, heal, and then 2 amplifiers. This way it almost fully heals all the vanilla hearts. However, we can make this spell even better by automating it. So let's have a look at that. Since Ars Nouveau adds the reactive enchantment that allows us to add spells to items, which can then react based on taking damage for armor or activating by using tools or weapons. To craft a reactive enchantment book, you have to use an enchanting apparatus. However, this time we need a source supply and an arcane core below our apparatus. One of the items needed for the recipe is a spell parchment. To create this, you need to put a blank parchment on a scribe table through right-clicking, and then, with a spell selected in your spellbook, sneak right-click on the table. In this situation, the spell selected is unimportant for the enchanted book itself. Lastly, we will add a lapis block and a source gem block, and we are ready to enchant our book. Now that we have our reactive book level on, which for our self-healing is actually the best option in my opinion, since it triggers less often than the higher levels of reactive, which reduces the waste of mana. But before we add our self-healing spell to the armor, I would recommend reducing the amplifier to 1 for the automated spell, since it will still trigger quite often. To add the spell to our enchanted armor piece, we need to create a new spell parchment. However, this time we have to select our self-healing spell. Next, we just place our healing spell parchment on one of the pedestals and add our armor inside of the enchanting apparatus. Voila, reactive self-healing armor. Reactive spells can be an additional layer of defense for every player. You could even make a spell that teleports everything that attacks you into the void, but we will get to that later. Next, let's talk about a smelter spell, which allows us to instantly smelt items. To cast this spell, you will need touch, rune, smelt, and then either AoE or pierce. The amount is here based on your maximum mana, but I would recommend to at least add 4 of those glyphs. When we use this spell on the ground, a rune will appear, on which we can then throw our iron ore that will instantly turn into iron ingots. You can even make this rune permanent by right-clicking with a runic chalk on the rune. However, now it needs a constant source supply close by for each smelting operation. Next, we have a classic damage combo at the tier 2 stage, which is using freeze and cold snap glyphs. This attack is great since it has AoE, does amazing crowd control by slowing the mobs down, and the damage is also pretty decent. For this spell, you will need either touch or projectile, then freeze, cold snap, 2 amplifiers, 1 delay, 1 cold snap, and again 2 amplifiers. And for our last spell at tier 2 we have the rocket launcher, which does a total of 90 damage. However, it has 2 drawbacks. First, you can also get hit by the explosions, and second, you will always need a rocket in your hotbar. To cast this spell, you will need projectile and then fireworks and delay, and then you will just alternate the 2 of them until your bar is fully filled. Additionally, you will need to craft yourself a max level rocket out of 7 firework stars like this. However, one benefit, the firework rocket is not getting used, so you can use it indefinitely. Now we are at the last stage, tier 3. Now we're getting to the really powerful spells. First, we have the teleporter. It allows you to teleport anyone or anything to a predefined spot. Want to teleport a boss monster into your friend's base? You could. Or do you want to teleport anything that attacks you directly into the void of the end dimension? No problem. So, for the spell, you will just need touch or projectile and then the blink glyph. Additionally, you will need a warp scroll in your offhand while using the spell, both for the active and also the reactive approach of it. The normal warp scroll only works in one dimension, but the stabilized one also works across dimensions. Also, the chunk in which the entity gets teleported to needs to be chunk loaded, which can be done by left clicking and then shift left clicking a chunk inside of the claim manager. To set the teleportation goal, you just need to sneak right click with the scroll in your hand, and now we can happily teleport things around. This spell can also be used together with runes to make permanent teleporters, which can be used for player but also mob transportation. You only need to place the warp scroll inside of the chest close to the rune with the blink spell. Next, we're getting to another powerful spell which can deal about 200 damage, the Wither Hanks combination. For this you need a form of your choice, so either projectile or touch, and then Wither, 3 amplifies, hacks, and 4 amplifies. If you're at this point and did not craft any Ars Nouveau armor yet, then now is definitely the time, since the last spell will need more than just the base mana pool. Now we're getting to the grand finale, the mining crossbow, which can mine hundreds to thousands of ores per reload. So let's get to it. We need no form, really important. Then we're going to do split, burst, sensitive, 4 times AoE, break, extract, and item pickup. Now we're going to place a enchanter's crossbow on the scribe's table and sneak right click it with our newly created spell. Also, this time we don't need the reactive enchantment since it's a weapon by Ars Nouveau. Next, we're going to improve our crossbow with 2 enchantments. First, piercing. Here the maximum you can reach is level 8, which allows our spell to not just mine 1 sphere of resources, but instead 9 of them. And secondly, we're going to add crescendo of bolts. The maximum you can reach here is level 5, which lets us shoot the bow 6 times without using mana. And we can make it even stronger by reforging the enchanter crossbow with apotheosis. This opens up gem slots in which we can add a Ender Surge gem that increases the enchantments by another 2 levels. Those enchantments allow us to reach the bottom of the mining dimension with only 1 reload of the crossbow. Next, we're going to need a netherite backpack with 6 stack upgrades and 1 item pickup upgrade. Inside of the item upgrade, you should block grass, dirt, stone, deep slate, netherrack, and endstone. With the junk items blocked, we're going to make use of a Jar of Voiding, which gives us mana for each item it voids. Now we just set the items we just blocked as to be voided inside of the jar. To do this, you put the item in your offense, the void jar in your main hand, and then right click. After you added all your resources, you can activate the void jar by sneak right clicking. Through this, we now instantly refill our mana after each shot since we're voiding so many resources. And lastly, we're going to get ourselves some Augment Arrow Split, which is going to double our spell another time. And with that, the mining can begin. I recommend to do this in the mining dimension since it will have the highest density of ores. And as you can see, our backpack is filling with hundreds and thousands of ores. And at this point, the only thing holding your back might actually just be your computer hardware. If you're interested in another magic mod focused on a demonic overpowered sword, check out my Morgan guide in the bottom left. And with that, I wish you all an amazing day.